Roses dying, hydrangeas not flowering, tulips disappearing, loads more questions, and here's why that's happening. Welcome to Ask the Gardener, where on this week I'll be dealing with those questions and many more that have come in during the week. You can send more questions in, of course, by putting them in the comments below. Or if you miss it, each week up on my stories I'll put in a question box and you can get them to me there, and each week I try and answer as many of them as I can here on Ask the Gardener. Now, Zita Nicholson wrote in, she said, I bought 4 established roses from Sligo and transplanted them in my garden in Kilkenny. Well, there's your problem, Zita. Sligo roses won't grow in Kilkenny. No, I'm joking, obviously. 3 have done well, but 1 looks like it's going to die. What should I do with it? We had the first frost here in Kilkenny last night, and that was the 22nd of September. Now, it's nothing to do with the first frost, I would say, Zita. You don't say when you bought them, but I'm going to guess that it was probably earlier in the year and before the summer. Now, of course, as we all know, we've enjoyed really fabulous summer weather, but we did have a drought. We had long periods with no rain. We're still having periods with no rain in glorious September. I'd say it's most likely that. I know that you're going to say, but the other 3 are fine. That's quite common, in fact, for one of them just not to get enough water. It's not an exact science, obviously. So it could just be that, and my gut is telling me that. Now, the good news there, of course, is you can take action. Just water it, and it should be fine. It should come back. It could be a thing, it's less likely, but it's still possible, a thing called replant disease. And what that is, or replant disorder, if you like, what that is roses cannot be planted in the same position as a rose was previously, believe it or not, right? So it could be that, and it could be just that you got unlucky with where you planted it, that there was a rose there within the last 15 years. Believe it or not, it can take that long for it to be okay again. I would say cut it back now, remove any dead growth or any growth that's under stress. Coming into the winter then anyway, it's a dormant period, so leave well alone. And then in the springtime, hopefully it'll come good. I'm kind of confident it will, and give it a feed then, maybe mulch around it with farmyard manure or similar during the winter months, and put in some kind of a biochar feed then next spring, which will help it thrive from next spring on. So hopefully that helps you there, Zita. Nuala Conlon was on, should I deadhead a young mop head hydrangea now? All the heads are brown. Well, Nuala, I wouldn't cut back. This question obviously enough comes up regularly, particularly at this time of the year. The hydrangea blooms are finished, they're gone over, but I wouldn't cut it back yet, because those blooms, they act a bit like a blanket over the plant. They protect the inside of the plant and the tender shoots inside on the dormant stems. They protect them from frost during the winter months. So I would wait until kind of February before I would start pruning it. End of February, just as the new growth is starting, and that should be fine. So leave well enough till then. Raymond is asking, my hydrangea has not 1 bloom on it this year, wonder why. Thanks. Sorry, I think that's from Pearl. Sorry. My hydrangea doesn't have 1 bloom this year, I wonder why. Most often, Pearl, it's because pruning at the wrong time of the year, or pruning it too hard, right? So if you prune it during the spring and summer months, you're going to very likely cut off this year's flowers, okay? The best time to prune it is actually, like I said a minute ago, in early February, or early to late February, anytime during February, so that it has the whole season to produce masses of new growth, because they're the stems that are going to produce the flowers. The flowers and growth produce this season, okay? Now, there is a magic number, so if you look at the stem that you're cutting back of the hydrangea, you will see little nodes on it, or leaf buds. Now, if you're doing it during February, they're still very likely to be dormant. You won't see the leaves, but you will see the buds. Now, if you cut so that there's fewer than 7 nodes or buds left on the stem, well, then that stem won't flower for a year or 2. Peculiarity to hydrangeas, and I don't know who first discovered it, but there you go. So don't prune it too hard, and prune it at the right time of the year. Again, a good feed maybe during the spring and early summer, high in potassium, should help it. Norman Nash, why do I not get grapes from my 2 vines? I can't answer that, Norman. I don't know if it's an indoor vine or if it's an outdoor vine, but I would say again it comes back to pruning, and you need good pruning is right. They need to be pruned during the winter, but also they need lots and lots of sunshine. Now, we've had lots of sunshine this summer, so if they haven't if they haven't produced fruits this summer, then I would suspect it's to do with pruning, maybe pruning wrong at the wrong time of the year, most likely, or perhaps not pruning at all. But send in more information on that one, Norman, whether they're growing indoors or outdoors. Any more information you can share, and I'll try and answer it in more detail. Now, Tracy is asking me, Can I cut back my lace stop? A lot of questions on hydrangeas. Can I cut back my lace stop hydrangeas now or wait till spring? Thank you, Tracy from Kerry. So Tracy, yes, exactly the same answer as what I gave a minute ago about the mop heads. Same advice. Don't cut back those hydrangeas now until the spring, because as I say, the deadheads are protecting that plant from the worst of the frost. Plus I think they look quite nice. If we can kind of recalibrate and not see them as dead and just see them as autumnal and winter, if you like, I think they look quite nice during the winter months, but they're protecting the plant anyway until the springtime, when you cut them back for the new growth to appear. Pauline Holland is asking me, what plant's best for window boxes? Pauline in Newtonards. Pauline, for colour, you can look at things like the cyclamens, which you'll see in garden centres all over the country at the moment. Little primroses, primulas, things like that. Winter pansies, violas. These are all really beautiful to look at and attractive when we need a kind of lift during the winter months. Perhaps more so than the summer, because the garden is lacking in colour during the winter months. So they're great for colour and to give you a little smile on the face. But you must remember, they may as well be useless, a lot of these guys, to any of the pollinators that are around, because they've been so intensively hybridized over the years that there's nothing left for the bees and for the good guys. So what I would actually suggest to you is not to use those guys, but look at things like winter heathers. So Irish grown winter heathers, I'm not talking about these spray painted aberrations that you find in garden centres, right? I'm talking about natural Irish grown winter flowering heathers, full of colour, full of texture, full of greenery during the winter months. You can't but smile when you see them, and the bees love them, the bees adore them. And in fact, honey that's made from Irish heathers is very, very good for you. I can't remember the name of the compound, but I know it's been proven to be as rich in the compound, if not richer, than Manuka honey. So the health benefits of Irish honey are made from heathers is very, very good. So, but apart from all that, I would just grow them for their beauty alone. Breda is asking me, why did my dahlia foliage go black during flowering? I would say, Breda, again, you don't say exactly when that happened, but I'm going to hazard a guess that it was recently. And we did get a very severe drop in temperatures over the last week. Not severe, but it went from, the evenings went from being very mild to quite cold, really. And the blackening of foliage on dahlias is definitely a sign of frost damage. So you don't even need to see the actual frost, but it's low temperature damage. I would suggest, Frida, that's what it is. If it was during the summer and we weren't having any low temperatures, then that would be different. So if that is the case, come back to me. But I would suggest that it's just frost damage. And what's going to happen, we're coming into that time of the year anyway, where the frost is going to kill off a lot of the herbaceous plants. Not kill them off completely, obviously, but put them to sleep for the winter. So what I would say is, as that's happening, enjoy the last of the dahlias, but then lift them out of the ground and protect those tubers for planting out again next year. Okay? Rebecca McMahon, when do you do all your pruning, now or in February? Well, Rebecca, if only it were so easy, huh? To have a catch-all answer for everything. You can go out and prune them all at one time. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. However, it's not that difficult either, Rebecca. So I kind of break them into two groups. So you have spring flowering shrubs, which are, you know, I'm sure there's exceptions to prove me wrong, but they're nearly all flowering on growth that was produced last year. So in other words, let's say a camellia, for example, a spring flowering plant, that's going to open up to flower in February, March, April, May, depending on the variety. And those flower buds will already be on the shrub from this year. Okay, so obviously we don't want to prune it now because we're going to cut off those flower buds. When the flowers stop and when they die off at the tail end of next spring, say May, June time, that's the time to prune them. Just then, prune them back then, and the plant still has plenty of time to produce new growth and new flower buds for the following year. And all that being said, that's only if you want to prune them. You don't have to prune them. It's only if they're getting a bit too big for you. If not, then leave well alone. Colette Higgins is asking me, I love tulips, but after 1 year they are gone. I buy the Darwin ones, but they don't come back the following year. Colette, you're not alone, I'm afraid. I would say I certainly have the same issue with tulips, and most people probably do. So I regard them as an annual. They are a bulb, so technically they're perennial, but our wet soils, you know, they just tend to succumb to our damp weather and slugs and snail damage. they tend not to come back year after year. So I treat them as an annual. I always add in new ones. If the few come on from last year, I treat it as a bonus, but I certainly don't rely on them. So I'm afraid I don't have a magic wand for you, Colette, except to say, if you want to follow the textbook advice, which is after flowering, go out, let the foliage die back, remove the foliage, lift the bulb, store them somewhere cool and dry during the summer, and don't plant them out till late. Plant them out in about November, December time. But that's an awful lot of work. So I don't know about you, but I certainly am too lazy to do that. That's why I just put in a few new ones each year, okay? Ailish Stephanie is asking me, should I cut back mature camellia after flowering time? Well, actually, inadvertently, Ailish, I just answered that question. So, camellias, as I say, to quickly recap on it, they've produced their spring flowers on growth produced the previous year. So any camellia growth this year is going to flower next year. So pruning it now is going to remove those flowers. Wait till the flowering has finished, kind of the end of the spring or summer, and that's when you cut them back, allowing the plant ample time to put on more growth to produce more flowers for the following season. So if you want to cut it back, only if you want to, you don't need to. It's after flowering is your window of opportunity, okay, Ailish? And Sheehan, and hi Anne, hi Peter, when is a good time to divide agapanthus, and should you cut back the leaves? Thanks, Anne. And if you want to divide agapanthus, and why not, because they're such a gorgeous plant, I would leave it, I wouldn't divide it at this end of the winter, or the other side of the winter, just early spring when they're coming back into growth. That's probably the best time. Put them into a very well drained soil. Use a good sharp spade. You'll create a few clumps very, very easily from one into their new pots or their new places in the garden, wherever you want. As I say, a well drained soil and full sun. Whether you should cut back the foliage or not, I mean, when you're dividing them, yes, I would say cut back the foliage, certainly, just to allow the root system chance to repair before it actively starts growing again. But in general, year on year, some agapanthus varieties are evergreen, some are herbaceous, which means they'll die back. So I wouldn't worry about cutting them back, I would just leave them to their own thing. But at time of dividing, yes, I certainly would cut the foliage back then. So I hope that answers you, and I think that's all the questions that have come in. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I hope I've been of some help to you. If you do have questions for next week's Ask the Gardener, get them in either in the comments below, as I say, or during the week up on my Instagram stories and on my Facebook stories. You'll see I give you the opportunity with a question box to post your question. So send it in there and I'll get to it for next week. Till then, thanks a million and enjoy the garden.